Hey, Randy Joe here, and this is 1001 Reviews, where I plan to review all albums from the 1001 Albums to Listen to Before You Die book. And today we are looking at Anthrax's 1987 album, Among the Living. According to the 1001 Albums You Must Listen to Before You Die, Anthrax's Among the Living, released in 1987, was produced under the Island label by Anthrax and Eddie Kramer. Art direction uncredited, nationality USA, with a running time of 50 minutes and 13 seconds. The little blurb reads, like the other members of the Big Four of thrash metal, Metallica, Megadeth, and Slayer, all of whom have 1980 albums in this book, New Yorkers Anthrax hit their artistic, critical, and commercial peak early with their third full-length album, Among the Living. A perfect blend of the speed that thrash fans hungered for, which only Slayer retained by the early 1990s. Crafted tunes of breathtaking unpredictability and a unique sound, Among the Living hit big because it acknowledged the advent of rap rock movement without pandering to it. Dressed in Vision Streetwear, a hip-hop clothing label before P. Diddy ever thought of such a thing, and throwing intentionally goofy proto-Beastie Boy rap poses, the band caused a few sniggers among their ardently studs and leather fan base until the songs were unleashed, silencing all criticism. The title track is a mid-tempo display of power and a mighty album opener, but the warp speed caught in a mosh with its no-brain unforgettable chorus line of, "Which one of these words don't you understand? Talking to you is like clapping with one hand," and the equally mesmeric N.F.L. still stand tall above most of the entire thrash canon today. The album belongs to rhythm guitarist Scott Ian, whose squeaky, super tight tone made thrash instantly recognizable, and drummer Charlie Benante, a fearsomely powerful player whose speed and precision is matched among his contemporaries only by Slayer's Dave Lombardo and Pete Sandoval of Morbid Angel. There is no forgetting the sheer joy of thrash's peak era, and this album is among the best. Written by J.M. J.M. being Joel MacGyver. Joel is the author of 22 books on rock music, including the best-selling Justice for All, The Truth About Metallica. His writing appears in The Guardian, Classic Rock, and many other magazines and newspapers. He is also the editor of Bass Guitar magazine. Before I get into this album, I feel it is only fair as a reviewer that I address any bias towards or against a particular genre or artist. And in this case, I would like to address the fact that I am not a huge metal fan myself, and I am not well versed in the genre. The metal that I do like tends to be more towards the stoner metal genre rather than thrash metal or death metal or anything like that. I am not particularly well versed in those fields, and I think it's only fair that I address that before I give any criticism towards this album here. At the end of the day, thrash isn't exactly my thing, and I do like only a few albums from that genre that I've heard, but for the most part, I don't know if I've really listened to all that much. So I'm going into this pretty blind and with very little knowledge to begin with. That aside, with Anthrax's Among the Living, we get an album that is a collection of incredibly well-performed and well-produced tracks, with consistently and constantly flowing thrashing that rarely ever lets up, which is exactly what this genre likes to hear. Even when the music does decide to hold back a little bit, it is very brief before getting right back into the pummeling drums and the electrifying guitar riffs. It's a constantly bombardment of sound towards the listener, and it is very enjoyable in the fact that it will get your adrenaline flowing. One other thing that I specifically really enjoyed about this album is how well it blends different genres, in particular hardcore punk, which is a genre that I am a fan of. You get hardcore punk kind of sprinkled all along songs like Among the Living, Caught in the Mosh, and N.F.L, songs that I actually like maybe the most off this album, except for maybe Indians. And as a fan of hardcore punk, with how well it is mixed into thrash metal here, it is quite impressive as it is never jarring. It is very natural and very easy flowing. On top of that, this album is also very lyrically dense, specifically taking time to give tribute to their influences and creating songs as backdrops for these different interests that the band have, such as Among the Living or Skeletons in the Closet, we get references to Stephen King's The Stand and Stephen King's Apt Pupil. I Am the Law is a Judge Dredd tribute track. The song N.F.L., my favorite track on here, especially with its hardcore punk influences, is a tribute to John Belushi. And ADI/Horror of It All is a song about a suicidal man, kind of retelling it, but it's also a tribute track to Cliff Burton of Metallica, who passed away shortly before this album's release. Very little of this album feels like filler tracks, and instead takes its time to honor its influences and provide very lyrically dense and instrumentally thick backdrops to their influences, like perfect companion pieces to these different art forms and different people who they now honor and respect. And even with this being thrash metal and not for everyone, they definitely create very catchy tunes that almost anybody could enjoy, especially with songs like Indians, with its really power-filled chorus just wailing out at the listener as they sing about Native Americans who have been colonized by the Europeans. It is detailing the terrible genocide that occurred eons ago while being extremely anthemic and power-filled. The riffs on here, especially in the opening, are so catchy and some of the best guitar riffs I've heard off of any thrash metal or just any music in general. I love the opening of the song specifically. The last song on here, Imitation of Life, is my least favorite off of the album, as at this point it doesn't feel like it is offering anything new and actually starts to feel very much the same of what we've heard so far. And if there was one weakness that this album carries, it's that although consistent, it is almost too borderline consistent in the fact that all the songs begin to mesh together in sound and style. Eventually, the very varying riffs and pummeling drums begin to become one. Even with them all being kind of unique, it's hard to pinpoint exactly which is which anymore and where the beginning of a riff and ending of a riff. It is very difficult to pinpoint exactly which riffs and pummeling drums go where, as at this point, most of the songs all sound like one and the same, to the point where by the end of this record, your brain feels like it has completely turned to mush with the onslaught of sound, which might be the appeal for most people and could be something that I could definitely get into in the right environment, but for just casual listening in the background, this isn't exactly my thing. But even still, I did get quite a bit of enjoyment out of this album, even not being a thrash metal fan at all, and I could see listening to many of the tracks on here again, especially tracks like N.F.L, Indians, Among the Living. But songs like Imitation of Life or One World or even Skeletons in the Closet, I don't think I'll be going back to that often. But I definitely enjoyed the overall trip of this album, and I think it was overall worth the listen to at least enter me into the world of thrash metal. The soft rating of this album is a 6.8, but I'm going to go ahead and harden that rating up to a 7, as it is a very good entry level, like I said, for thrash metal new listeners. It has the catchiness that'll draw you in, but the thrash that will keep you to stay. And I'll also go ahead and for now say that this album is essential, as just for those reasons alone, why not give it a try and see if thrash metal is your thing. That pretty much does it for this video. If you like the video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on my journey of listening to all 1001 albums to listen to before you die. I review them twice a week, every Tuesday and Friday. The next album we are listening to is number 956. That's a high one, more modern, which ends up being Ali Farkatur Savain. Not familiar with that one. That will be released next week, Friday. Listen to that then. And on Tuesday, we have Portishead's Third. Thanks for watching. This has been Randy Joe signing off.